So welcome. Those that were here for the first panel, either stay or leave the room so that we give some respect to the next chairs and panellists for what we've got coming up. So I'm delighted to welcome to the stage your chair for the next panel, which is Mark Sweeny, dear friend of mine, great innovator, phenomenal contributor to the growth of Wales, someone that all of you should get to know personally. Highly recommend a conversation, and I'm very sure that he will be leading a very interesting panel here. So this is Pitch to Exit. So let me introduce you to Mark Sweeny, who is the founder of Novo here in Wales. Thank you very much indeed.
This is going to be a good session for me. Usually I'm on the panel, so today I get to be referee for the next 45 minutes. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome, who are hiding behind the screen, James, Kevin, Helen and Alison to the stage, please. Hey. That means you've got the microphone first, James. So first off, welcome everyone. We're going to explore for the next 45 minutes, and it's going to go fast, the founder journey in Wales from pitch to exit, something I've been lucky to have done myself a couple of times. But we've got some great panellists today. So just going to go down the line if everybody would like to introduce themselves. James.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you. Thanks for coming to the session. My name's James Smith. I'm CEO and founder of a company called Critical Cloud. I spent quite a long time in Cardiff and Wales building businesses. Before that, I built and scaled a company called DevOps Group here in Cardiff. And I'm sure I'll get into the story of that a little bit as Mark quizzes us.
Thank you, James. Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin, currently CEO and co-founder of Venture Comet. Previous to that, I co-founded a company called Credus, a Cardiff-based identity verification AML KYC business. Prior to that, I was a developer, not a very good one. I quickly moved out of the coalface and into start my own businesses and various consultancy. And yeah, a bit of a passion for startups, and keen to see how this goes today.
Hi everyone, I'm Helen, and now I'm a business coach and strategist. I was the previous founder of a resale brand called was Tiger Cardiff, and it was rebranded to Flying Tiger Copenhagen. And we scaled that business across Wales and Bristol, opening 9 stores across the region. I now also have recently started a beautiful women-only, sorry, men in the room, network for aspiring and female founders, and about to launch a membership on that, an online membership as well.
Hi everyone, I'm Alison. I was CEO and founder of a business called Strategens. I've spent 27 years in the world of talent and HR in some way, shape or form. And if you'd asked me 27 years ago if I would ever launch and exit a software business, I would have laughed in your face. So hopefully we can talk a little bit about that as we're going on. We sold the software and assets in August of last year, so I now work for a business called Lightcast.
Thank you. There's nothing like talking to people who've been there, seen it and done it, and I think we've got a great set of panellists today. So we're going to talk money, we're going to talk getting into this straight away. So because there's a lot of diverse stories here. So first question, validation and early stage. So we're going to go, we're trying to take this in a logical order as much as we can. Kevin, we'll start with Kevin. How did you validate your idea and convince early investors and supporters to come on board and back you?
Yeah, it's a great question. If I look at the Credus journey, which was probably a bit unusual in that the actual genesis for that wasn't so much myself and my co-founder having a genius idea that we wanted to take out there. It was more that we got approached by who was, would end up being our kind of client and investor to actually build an app for them. So we got approached to build an app to solve a problem around right-to-work checks, particularly in construction. And what we saw was an opportunity to turn that into a business and then spin it out of the main company and take it in a different direction. And monetize the product to a variety of different audiences and go on that journey. And I think really in terms of validation and convincing people to go on that journey and invest in that and put the money in to let us go and build the product, it's all about really getting traction and in particular revenue. Getting revenue is so important because it validates that not only have you got a product that solves a problem, which is important, but more importantly, people will give you money for it. It's easy, but you can solve a problem for free. But what's really, really important to be able to convince investors is to show that you can solve a problem in a way that you can monetize. And for us, that was the key, proving that we could take this product that we'd put into a client and solved a problem for them, but actually be able to make money out of it and go and sell it into a wider audience. So I would say that's the key thing. Get into revenue and proving that people will actually pay you for the product you've created.
I mean, I can validate that myself. I always say to my engineers when they come up with great ideas that when I'm lucky, they always come up with great ideas. But the first question I always say to them, they know this really well, is how quickly to cash? Because I need to know how quickly is it before I can actually physically get the cash in through the door. How long am I going to fund it? So I think that's a key thing. Helen, is your next door. What's your experience?
Yeah, slightly different. So mine was a JV, so we were a joint venture partner. But I found the most important thing was actually having conversations. And I think a lot of people don't have the confidence to have those initial conversations. So for me, validating the idea, we knew it was going to bring a beautiful, exciting brand to Wales and England. But I think having the conversations, getting people to really trust us and know us and get to trust us in being a person, rather just looking at something on paper, for me was the biggest validation. Yeah.
Okay. And I'll be interested to see what the panel's response to this one is. So I'll give it to James first. I'm going to jump across here with the microphone. But bootstrap it or raise cash? What would you do? Or what's your view on that?
I think I'll follow up on Kevin's point. Revenue is the validator of whether you've got something that people are willing to pay for. And people often talk about all the forms of funding a business. And they often overlook money from customers, right, as a thing. So I definitely prioritize that. In the first business I kind of built, that was number one. That was the goal, was to because we didn't know whether we could actually get something to market people would pay for. Second time round, it gives you a bit of a different position though. So actually with the second business, I did a pre-seed round. So we did pre-revenue, pre-seed. Didn't have any money, we just had an idea, but we had an absolute understanding of what we were going to do to get to revenue day one. And so it wasn't go away and kind of invest massively in a product. We're a services company, so I knew from the moment we took the money, we could get revenue quickly. So I haven't changed that view. So I'd still kind of say you need to bootstrap and then you need to raise to accelerate kind of the momentum that you've built from getting off the ground.
And Alison, same question really, bootstrap or raise? What approach views?
That's a really interesting one for me because we were pre-product, pre-revenue when we took finance. And I think one of the things that I learned was don't do that again, for lots of different reasons, but it puts pressure on the business in ways that you don't imagine when you first launch. And so in hindsight, our MVP of software was really a version 1, and I would have built a proper MVP. I'd have taken it out to clients and said, will you give me money for this, right? Our clients were all big global corporates, right? If I can get, even if it's 100 grand, it doesn't matter. It just proves the traction. So I would now bootstrap and then raise.
Thank you. Let's get it Wales specific. Funding challenges in Wales, and I go back to Kevin or Helen, as Helen's next door, we'll go down the line. What's the biggest challenges of raising capital in Wales compared to other markets, or have you raised outside of other markets? Because we always hear this a lot, it's really difficult to raise money in Wales.
Yeah, so I've only ever raised in Wales, and we were a complete unknown entity, as most people were. And also, we were women in business, starting out at the end of a recession. And for us, comes back to that trust. They didn't know us, and really building that trust, that confidence to actually buy into us was one of the biggest challenges. So, yeah, we were talking just now, it's like, it was quite a while ago for us, wasn't it, when we raised, and it was a very different market, I think, to what it is now. There's different opportunities, but I think the biggest thing as well is that not everyone has got your passion, and not everyone believes in what you do. So that's quite a hard one to sort of validate as well.
Okay. James, when you've raised money, have you looked at the wider market outside of Wales, and do you think it's generally easier to raise money outside of Wales than inside Wales, from your experience?
So yes is the answer. When we did a venture capital raise, I kind of went to London and did the beauty parade. Must have seen 50 to 100 VCs, and we got 8 term sheets back from that process, and then selected BGF because of their local market experience, actually. So it's kind of like went out and then came back inside. I think to sort of answer this question slightly differently, there's a couple of problems I see, and they're sort of specific to the type of capital you're raising. There's a risk aversity in the venture cap market in the UK generally, I think, compared to kind of international markets. And I think that's a mentality thing in the UK. I think if you've got the right business and it's got the right traction, it's easier. But I think in those early stages, certainly venture cap funding or kind of organisational, institutional funding is quite hard. And then specifically in Wales, if you look at the angel investment community, I just don't think it's big enough at the moment. There aren't enough angels to make it a bit easier. So there's small groups of angels who are extremely active, doing a lot of good work. But actually there's a small group of angels constantly getting asked for the money as well, right? So they've got to be a little bit more choosy around what they're investing in, and that makes it all a bit harder. So I think it's the different size of checks have different challenges.
So, I mean, that brings us nicely onto like finding the right investors. So I'll go right the way down to Alison, back down the line. This microphone's going to be well travelled by the end of this. How did you identify the right investors, and how important is the alignment of the investors towards the capital? I mean, at the end of the day, money's money, it's oil, but it's the other dynamic, isn't it? That
Yeah,
people bring.
I'm not sure. I wouldn't hold that now. I wouldn't hold the money as money view now. I'd go, right, okay, how would I do it differently, right? Because I think you learn stuff through this journey, and then you can apply that next time round. I think, to James's point, understanding the risk or risk aversity of your investor group right from the outset is really important in this space, particularly if you're in tech, and particularly if you're in software, because you're automatically in quite a risky scenario, right? So really understanding that. We were DBW funded to start off with, and with that comes an attitude to risk that is interesting, right, and right for their business model, but for us was challenging at times, right? But they gave us money, and we weren't expecting it. If/when I do it again, the when is determined on whether I can avoid divorce or not. But when I do it again, there are 2 things that I would definitely do. The first is make sure that we have investors from our industry, and the second is to make sure that we have investors with functional experience. I think that's probably the most important, and then aligning on that risk aversity. I think one of the things that's quite interesting, it's quite easy to get drawn into your investor group who, quite right, want to be able to help you. But you also need to avoid, hey, I've got someone I think you should have a coffee with, right? You've got a business to run, and to be able to focus on that. Is that better? Yeah, thank you. Couldn't figure out if it was me or not. Yeah, I think recognising that you've got a business to run, and investors who are saying, come and have a coffee with Bob, or come and have a coffee with Sue. Yeah, if Bob and Sue aren't going to help you advance your business, say no.
Kevin, would you say any red flags to look for when dealing with investors from the outside? Is there anything that would kind of sets you off the spider senses when you're talking to people?
Yeah, I fairly recently was on a podcast series called Sharks, Snakes and Shareholders, which is done by Dan Thornborough and actually from Innovators Uncensored. It's a great series, actually. There's loads of really good guests on it. It's worth checking out. And that was literally about this subject, so, a whole 9 or 10 hours about red flags and horror stories. And there is a lot. I mean, there's a lot of different things to look out for. I think for me, the really important thing is to understand what kind of investment you want and what kind of involvement you want in the business. And red flags really spotting where people are doing something different to what they're telling you they're going to do. So, for example, if you're looking for very passive investment, but then people start asking really active questions and wanting to be involved in a lot of things, that's a red flag because it's not what you're looking for. It doesn't necessarily mean it's bad behaviour because you might want very active involvement. But if what you've spoken to someone about is very passive involvement and then you start noticing they want something very active, that's quite different. Or maybe if you want patient capital and you want something that's going to be over a longer period, but then you start getting signs of wanting a really quick return, that's a red flag. So I think the red flags really are, it's not so much you can point to something and go, that's always a red flag. A red flag is understanding the type of investment you want and spotting when people are telling you one thing, but actually doing something different. And that's always one to look out for me.
And James, any negotiating tips when you got down to the term sheets that you can offer up?
Yeah, I think there's a few. I think be really clear on what you will concede on and what you won't. So drawing your own red lines, I think, is really important. It's a negotiation, right? So there's going to be compromise, and that's going to come from both sides. But you need to know where you're prepared to kind of move the needle and where you aren't. I think being super clear on your own valuation as well, and kind of doing your homework. Everyone says, I want it as high as possible, but that's not always realistic. But I think having a really clear idea of the range of the boundary that your valuation can sit inside helps form part of that negotiation strategy. And it is a give and take, right? If you've got the right investor, I think they will work with you on those things, to try and get the best deal. And ultimately, this is going to be a longer term relationship. It will get stressful at points. It will get stressful if you have to raise more money. It will get stressful on exit. So I think testing that sort of compromise, that negotiation stuff at the start is probably a good sign of the relationship to come as well.
And I just think, add to the audience a couple of my own experiences, definitely validate what Alison said. When people come and talk to me, I mean, basically it's a professional services consultancy, digital transformation business, but people that actually know my company, know my market, I have a much more intelligent conversation with them than people that don't know about my market at all. And I'm more naturally drawn to them anyway because they do have insight, perhaps insight I don't have. No one has the monopoly on it. So I think if you're dealing with potential investors or and I'll say this nicely because I've got my banker in the room as well from HSBC. There's your plug, okay? There's your plug. But, when I was talking with HSBC, people that understood my business and my industry, it made it a much easier conversation to have. You got us. So I would say it's a big thing. And I think the other point that James made, I know exactly how much my company's valued because I track it all the time. I know what the ranges are, and the ranges do move because it's macroeconomics and markets change. But I have a very good understanding of what the value of my company is by using the same metrics that PEs and VCs use all the time. I mean, I can walk into a room and I can tell you what's on their spreadsheet before they've even shown it to me because I know exactly where the range is. And I think that's a really good discipline to get into. And I always validate that data all the time for multiple points. It's a really good place to be because it is a negotiation and you want all the cards up your sleeve that you've got. So knowing how much it's worth, what the market is, or what the benchmark is a really key point.
And he won't do it himself. There is a company on stage that can help you with that.
Ah. So, biggest lessons learned, and we'll go down the line. Looking back, what's the one thing you would have liked to have known before you started trying to raise any kind of capital?
It's not to me.
Yes, to you, and then we're going to go down the line.
not fair,
So everybody's
Chris.
going to get to answer the question. Everybody's going to get to answer.
One thing I would like to have known. Yeah, you stumped me with that. I think, yeah. Yeah, go on, Nick.
We'll come back to you.
I think probably the biggest learning for me was around cap table structure and not giving away too much too quickly. That first raise you do sets so much of the tone for the rest of the journey. And I think if you get that wrong, you give away too much or you get the structure wrong, all the way through the journey it comes back to haunt you and it just multiplies and gets worse and worse and worse. And even at every stage, whether that's future raises, whether it's coming to an exit, especially if you've got multiple co-founders, because you're already on a much smaller chunk of the equity, you can be starting with 30% equity or less, then you do a raise, you're suddenly 15, 20%, and everything's more difficult then in terms of dilution decisions and exits. So I think for me, it would be really protecting the cap table a lot more, understanding the importance of getting the valuations right, retaining as much equity as possible, and not kind of setting yourself up to be boxed into a corner later.
Yeah, I think mine is very much touching on what you said just now about the people in your space and having that support network that I didn't think was actually important, and it is so important to have the right people around you with the right values that actually align with you. Because otherwise you just get caught in this trap that is quite difficult then to get out of. So for me, I think the one thing I would have known is making sure that you connect with the right people at the different stages as well of your business. If that's, startup, pre-seed, whatever it is, I think finding the right people to be around you, for me was something that I was very naive to. So yeah.
Yeah, and I'd echo that. In fact, I'd echo everything so far. So we probably we definitely raised too early, which meant that our cap table diluted me as an individual. And I'd come out of big corporate life with a big salary, and you're faced with an MVP, and then you watch that dilute as you continue to raise, and you start to go, hold on a minute, you start to question what's in this for me. But aligned to that, and particularly to what Helen said, is I didn't have a co-founder. Right, so I sold a car on the morning of payroll because a client couldn't pay us on time. So I literally sold the car to meet payroll. And you're taking all of that on your own shoulders every month, month in, month out. And your investors aren't taking that, you're taking that. And you need to do that with somebody else who is kind of in the same bed as you. Not literally, clearly, but understanding what that means.
To my fellow panelists for buying me some time. I think the biggest lesson I learned is you kind of put all this work in, and so there's two parts to it. One is it's a massive distraction raising money, huge distraction.
Yeah.
And, you got to do two jobs, right? And you got to do two jobs when you raise, and you got to do two jobs when you exit. And then amongst all of that, you got to keep your own business running and scaling. And so that's super hard. So I think I wish I'd known how much time sink was going to go in and how much of a distraction it would be at both ends of the kind of the journey. And the second thing is, I think I wish I'd had more maturity the first time I raised to actually treat it what it is, an investment. And for every pound you spend of that investment, how are you actually going to get whatever return you expect to come out? And how are you going to make that money work for you? It's easy to get the cash in and go, oh, we'll start hiring, we'll start spending more on marketing, we'll start spending more on sales, and it's all going to be rosy. And actually you start to spend a lot of money without actually working out where the return is going to come from. And all of a sudden that money starts disappearing very, very quickly. So I think that's something I've learned over time, is to get that discipline around that cash, to tighten you, to box it, to run it as an innovation factory inside your own business, to run those experiments and make sure that every pound that's spent, you get something back out of.
I was just having a deja vu moment listening about the selling the car. For me, it was my American Express card. That got a slapping for about 4 years. I don't think it ever went under £30,000. I never paid it off. That's a very expensive way to fund a company, trust me. But you do what you've got to do at the time from there. let's zoom out a little bit and look at Wales a little bit wider, the wider ecosystem. I'm going to throw this down to Helen, this one first off. Do you see the Welsh startup ecosystem evolving still, and what support have you seen around the ecosystem that, well, can help founders in various guises?
Yeah, so I work now with a lot of startups, and when I started, there just wasn't any support. Like, there just wasn't anything available that I felt was right for me. And the one thing I will say is Wales as a country, you can go an hour and a half down the road to Swansea and then come back to Cardiff, and the opportunities are so different in each postcode, and that frustrates me. It frustrates me so much because it's like a postcode lottery of where you can find potential opportunities in different regions. So the one thing I would say, the ecosystem can be good to a certain extent. But again, I think where you are is make sure that you've got, and coming back to the people, because that's something that I really, really missed, was having the people around me. So I think it is good in a way, but I feel like Wales should all be the same with offering different opportunities to startups, and I think that's something that's really missing as a country.
Kevin, you?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of good stuff happening in Wales. I totally take that point as well. I think it's quite fragmented. I mean, there's quite a good scene in Cardiff. There's quite a lot of stuff happens, especially in the early startup stage. I'm a big fan of Innovators Uncensored. I don't know if any of Richard Lee's outfit. He does a great job of bringing together early stage founders just for social events and that kind of, and it's just good to speak to people, and just have a connection with people facing the same kind of challenges. FinTech Wales, obviously we're a member of, which is really useful, and there is some good bodies in Wales, but it is, compared to, for instance, the scene in somewhere like London, it is undeniably like just a different level again. You go to London and so much more is happening. There's such a different vibe about it, and I do think it's good in Wales, but it could certainly be stronger, I think.
James?
Yeah, excuse me. I think the startup support in Wales is excellent. There's a lot of funds here, there's a lot of money here at that level, and there's a lot of support. But it really tails off at that scale-up stage. Once you start to get into the higher end of growth, and you start to need bigger rounds, and you need more experience, and you need more people, there still is a lack of support, and there has been for a long time. Yeah, I've brought the first business back into Wales in 2014 with the help of the Welsh government. We raised in 2018, and there's more money here now. Foresight is here alongside BGF. We've got CCR's fund as well. DBW still kind of ploughing away, but a lot of that is going into the startup scene, in my opinion, rather than the scale-up scene. So more to be done in that space, I think.
Alison?
We need to invest in more mics, right? Or one of those throw-along mic things. So I think that I echo what James says. The startup scene here is really supportive, actually. I think that there is, for me personally, I kind of came from a big corporate journey, and there was this assumption that I knew what I was doing because I'd had a big sales and marketing career. But that big sales and marketing career was not scaling a business from scratch, right? And actually learning from other founders and accepting that help and the startup help was really important. The Welsh government were brilliant to us, and we did a few of the innovation trips. So we went out to MIT, which were part funded, and that meant that the technology that we saw out of MIT, we put into the business really early. And interestingly now, with our new owner, we are steps ahead in terms of some of the tech that we put in, and that's a direct result of the ecosystem sending us on the innovation trips. But I think I want to echo what James says. The scale-up piece is very different here, right, and needs a wider ecosystem to help it and grow in Wales. I've only got one other point, right? Our clients were all big global corporates, and the bit that I found interesting, and you can tell I'm not Welsh, I now live in Brecon, but the bit I found interesting was I'd meet founders and I'd meet scale-up businesses, and I'd go, well, have you talked to BP? Or have you talked to Microsoft? Or have you talked to Accenture? It's like, no, I've talked to... Like, there's this whole big, wide world out there. I think if we can get the ecosystem, Global Welsh is trying, if we can get the ecosystem to connect to some of the big global corporates, we can fly, right? But we need to find a way to get that ecosystem helping us.
Okay, so we're starting to come into the last part of this session. This is always the, I suppose, depends on your point of view, the exit. And I think it's fair to say not many people do achieve a financial exit, and that is a fact. But we've got people here that have done it, which is fantastic. But we'll start with Alison, if I may, and we'll work our way along. How did you start thinking about the exit strategy? And when did you start thinking about it? And how did it just shape your funding decision making?
Day one is the answer. So we knew our likely exit strategy from day one. We identified 7 or 8 different potential acquirers. And yeah, that really shaped everything that we were doing and growing. Yeah, was that right? I don't know. The exit we had wasn't the exit that we wanted. I'll be very straight on that. But it was an exit, right? And it was to one of those original 6 or 7 businesses that we talked about. So I think you need to start. It's a bit like James was saying when you're looking for your scale-up funding. You need to start to build relationships with these potential businesses right from the outset, because that helps you. You get your customers telling you where they'll put their money, and then you get investors and potential investors saying, this is where we want, these are the things that your business needs to have done for us to have a further conversation. But some people don't grow a business to exit it. So, if you're growing it to just grow a business, don't worry about it.
Yeah. Helen?
Yeah, so mine's a bit different to that, actually. I don't think I thought about it early enough. We always had like a kind of rough 5-year plan. But I think it was, again, I didn't have the support that you said you had. And I think because that support wasn't there, it wasn't one of the major things that I was thinking of. We absolutely loved the brand. We loved what we were doing. We probably should have exited in year 3. Our EBITDA was a lot better than it was when we exited in year 5. The reason we stayed was because we loved the brand. We also were kind of making a point. And was that point worth it? No. Yeah.
Sorry, I stole the mic back again. But actually, I think there's something really important. There's people used to say to me, oh, you'll really struggle when you sell your baby. And I was like, this is not my baby, right? This is a thing that from the outset I've built to give away. And frankly, there were days when it was up for emergency foster care, right? It was just like, anybody want it now? So I think you need to determine that at the beginning, because it does mean it isn't your baby, because it isn't. It's somebody else's. It's your investors and it's your shareholders.
Kevin?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd echo especially what Alison said. I think you've got to be you do get a bit emotionally attached to your company because you put a lot into it, but I was quite detached from my business. It was always the plan to build it and sell it. It was never a real struggle to let it go. I do think thinking about an exit early is very good. I think it's good practice. And I do think it really shapes your funding decisions, how big you want the company to get, when you want to exit, yourself personally, what you want to get out of the company. Understanding that early on will really help make those strategic decisions. And I think if you don't understand that, it's very easy to end up in a world where you actually can't exit in the way you probably want to. Because of the type of funding you take, because of the journey you go on, you make the whole thing a lot more difficult. So I think understanding early on how you want to exit. And the other point I take as well is forming really good relationships with your suppliers and your clients. There's a very good chance, it was for us when we went through our exit process, out of the last 3 or 4 possibilities, at least 2 of them were really big clients that we'd had throughout the journey, and one was the supplier. So it's very likely the people you're talking with, your partners through the journey, are going to be there at the end as potential acquirers. And understanding that and having a sensible plan around what that looks like and how big it looks, I think really helps shape the strategy all the way through.
Yeah, I think very similar. So DevOps Group was built to serve a purpose and prove a point in Wales. We brought the company into Wales to scale it, well, to grow it, scale it, and exit, right, and demonstrate it could be done here. And that journey had to involve venture cap funding out of a serious raise to prove we could do that. What it allowed us to be internally is extremely transparent. So we put an EMI scheme in from day one, so we could tell everyone in the business, this is what we're doing, and this is how you're going to benefit if you help us on the journey. So that made it very easy to talk about exit. We did it all the time. We were super transparent about it. The same as the other panelists, I made my piece that the company was there as a vehicle to demonstrate that point and wasn't a baby that I was going to get super attached to. I did get super attached to all the people though, and that doesn't become any easier. So you have to do the right things to take care of people in that journey. And that's really difficult on exit. We got acquired by a big NASDAQ listed US corporation that ultimately saw the world a very different way. And so whilst we achieved exactly what we wanted to do with the company, kind of post-sale, it's been extremely challenging to see what they've done to the business and what, more importantly, what they've done to the people. And so that's difficult to make peace with, but it's part of the reason I started again, because I want to prove that, you know, I can do this again. And I don't know if anyone else in the panel sits here, but I sit here every day with imposter syndrome thinking I got lucky. So let's prove I'm not.
That is so my story. That is so my story. Right, we've got 10 minutes left. So I'm going to go once more down the line for one final piece of advice, and then I want to open it to the floor, and we do want some questions, okay? So one final piece of advice to the audience, please. Alison.
Don't ever offer to take the mic from James when he think about us. Just do it, right? We've got this motto in our house, and it sits on the wall, and it goes, if you get to the end of the day and you've got both your arms and both your legs and nobody's died, what is the worst thing that's going to happen, right? And I think if you've got an itching feeling to do something and grow it, just do it. Make it happen and live your dream.
It's great advice. Helen.
Wow. So, yeah, I'm on the same line as that. And I think, especially if you're thinking about doing something or scaling or starting, you know, where you're at in this room, but nobody's going to hear your talents if you're whispering. So let's shout out about each and every one of you. And yeah, just go for it. It's not going to be easy. It's not. If anyone tells you it's easy, they're lying. But just enjoy it as well.
One thing I say to founders a lot these days is being an entrepreneur is like a career choice. And I think very often there can be this sense of you're going to do one company, get super rich really quick, and that's it. And it isn't really the way to look at it, I don't think. I think, you know, the most successful founders might have 5, 6, 7, 8 companies over their career, but it's kind of in your blood. You know, if you've done one company, the chances are you're going to want to do another one. So my advice would be don't necessarily try and go for the unicorn straight off. You know, create a good business, create something that gives you a return, make some money, and then realize you'll probably go again after that. And that's fine. You know, so having a career as an entrepreneur is great, and going through multiple businesses, multiple exits, hopefully, is where a lot of the value is. So don't just think of it as a one-time thing. Think of it as a journey and a multiple kind of career steps.
Thanks. I think the one thing I'd say is ask for help. Like, you're in an amazing ecosystem here where Wales is small, but actually it gives you the advantage to get access to people that you wouldn't be able to get access to in London. It'd be really hard. So there are so many people willing to give you support and advice and knowledge, and you know, even if that's just listening and having a coffee to how hard it is as you're scaling, there's plenty of people who'll be prepared to do that. But the other thing I'd say is think big. Wales has this kind of ambition challenge, in my opinion, of not enough companies kind of wanting to go and globally dominate the world. And we might not all get there, but I think if you can kind of think that way at the get-go, it helps change some of the decision making. Maybe it kind of helps you kind of just have this focus when the dark days are there and it's all hard and you can't figure out, you know, where you're going to get the next payroll from, and you've got to sell your car, right? But actually, if you've got that bigger vision attached to, sometimes it can help make that a bit easier.
It's great. And I think I'll just throw one last thing in for myself. Remember, if you're aiming to sell something for a financial return, you have to build something of value in the first place. Because if you don't build the value, trust me, there's nothing to sell. So that's really important. So we've got 5 minutes. Sarah, you're going to give me brownie points because I'm right on time. But we're going to open it to the floor because it's not often you get a great panel like this together. So questions? Hang on, Mike's coming. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Rhys from Swansea University. So I want to take the panel back to a point that was made about bootstrap first in hindsight, retain the value and don't bring the money and the investors in potentially too early. So that's the money side. What about the people side? So do you recommend, there's never one size fits all, but do you recommend bootstrapping yourself? Do the HR, do the customer service, do everything you possibly can yourself, or would you bring people in early to add value?
It's happened again. I would outsource everything that isn't your core strength, as long as you can afford to do it.
I would agree. I remember being sat on the stairs with a laptop on my legs, thinking, this is absolutely bloody ridiculous. We've got to outsource and get people in that have got more experience than us. And I think that's really, really important. So absolutely. If you can outsource or skill swap or anything at the beginning, do that, because then you can focus on your business and your own genius. Yeah.
Anybody else?
Yeah, no, I would totally agree. I think your time as a founder is probably the most valuable resource to go into the business. There's certainly those people involved. So spending it doing accounting stuff you're not really very good at for 10 hours a week is just the opportunity cost of your own time, not in the bit. And it's easy to say when you really are bootstrapped and every £10 counts, but all the time you're not working on the business and you're working in the business, it's really like just a criminal waste of a really important resource if you can possibly avoid it. So totally agree.
Might be our first disagreement. Never outsource customer conversations and sales, ever. So if there's anything that you're going to do and focus on, it would be that. And also, I think the strategy's right. Once you've got the scale and you've got the money, start to kind of hire better people than you and make sure they're in the right jobs, doing the right things. But in those early stages, it's just not always practical. So you're just going to have to get used to wearing 9 different hats and doing 9 different jobs, sometimes really badly. Just because no one else can do it, right? And often when you look around as a founder and you go, who's going to do that for me? There is no one else, so it's always on you. But make sure you never outsource or aren't involved in the customer conversation in those early days, or ever, potentially.
Thank you. Gentleman over there.
Thanks, everybody. Really enjoyed that. Really, really enlightening. Thank you very much for your time. So I'm an investor. I feel like I should pause for almost some booze at this stage. Look, I think the funding environment's been really tough for founders for 2-3 years, both that and on the exit environment as well. I think founder fatigue it's a very real thing, and I just wonder if you guys have got any advice maybe for the other founders in the audience of how you kind of get through, what got you through perhaps.
So I actually burnt out 3 times when I had my business, and I realised the business I've got now, I actually set boundaries that would not happen. And it was for the simple fact that I wanted to do everything. And I felt I had to. And now, it's obviously in hindsight, which is an absolute bugger, right? But in hindsight, you have to look after yourself. So if you go down, the rest of your business goes down, right? So I'd say as a founder, get the support that you can, that you need, set those boundaries, look after yourself. 100% is really, really important.
I think Kevin's got a great answer on this, which I think is helpful in a minute, but I think I wanted to echo what Helen said. Everyone says, make sure you take time for yourself, make sure you make yourself healthy, make sure you do this. And you think, bloody hell, I'm up at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm doing all of the jobs that everybody else is doing, I'm switching off at 11 o'clock at night. When? Right? When am I supposed to go for a run? When am I supposed to do? And it's really easy to get stuck in that trap. We went through an exit that was not what we had planned, and we did that because my husband got knocked off his motorbike and nearly died. And I just remember sitting in ITU thinking, what the hell am I doing, right? What the hell am I doing sitting here with my laptop? And I think understanding what that's like as a founder, and I balance that by still saying do it, right? But I think understanding that is really important as you go into this journey, going in eyes open.
Well, not sensible. And it's something actually I'm very passionate about myself is how difficult that founder journey is and how long it takes. One of the things we're doing in a new business is a scheme to help founders release some equity after 2.5, 3 years into the journey. Just knowing there's going to be a window where you can get like 5% of your equity out, it makes a huge difference. I think it goes for early stage investors as well, but certainly founders, you've got to have a way to win on the journey. Having to wait 7 years of minimum wage and sacrifices is very, very difficult. So knowing you've got a window, at least kind of 2, 3, 4 years in, where you can start getting some money out, which, you know, happens at Series B and sometimes Series A when you fundraise, but I think even earlier in the journey, founders need to see a way to win and get something back out of the business just to keep them in the game. And I think it's really, really important not having to go 7, 8 years is a really long time, you know, on a hard stretch.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, actually. That was one of the mistakes I made in the first raise. We raised over 3 million in the VC raise, and I got included in a network of BGF kind of founders, and every conversation I had was, oh, we've taken money out and de-risked as part of that raise. And I kind of thought, well, I'm practically like one of the only people in this room who didn't do that. Where did I go wrong? So I couldn't agree with that more. But the one thing I would say is I have this definition of entrepreneurship, and that's an entrepreneur is someone who keeps going when everyone else has given up. And so it's just, I don't know whether it's trainable, but it's definitely something in our DNA that just we keep going and going and going, right?
Yeah. Thank you. And we're right on time. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for a great panel.